Okay guys, welcome back. What we're going to do in this video is pop in our south elevation. Now that we have the width of our north elevation, we can use this to project down to the south. Now I just want to quickly revisit our little checklist and our floor plan. Okay, so we know we've got the width of our south elevation. We know the height will be the same as the north, which is 6. We can work out the width of our windows and the gaps between them like we did in the front. Now there aren't any external doors on this elevation, so that's cool. We can pop in the height of our windows and any other features because we're doing the elevations. So the height of windows isn't on the floor plan. As you know, you only have the width of them. And we will be adding some textures and materials to this side, so that other than glass. So I'll step you through those. And any other external features. So we will still be able to see the terrain and the steps on this elevation here. So if we just have a quick look on our ground floor, we have one window on along this side, which is the south side. It's above the kitchen, so I want that to be like a splashback window, so it'll be like a long panoramic style window. There aren't any other features along this wall. On our top story, so on our first floor, there is a window that's in a walkway here, so I imagine that would be quite large to let in some light as a bit of a feature for the inside of that part of the house. Okay, so let's get this sorted. This is the easiest thing to do. What we're going to do is, first of all, make sure our rulers are up. So if they weren't up already, hold down Control R so you get your rulers at the top and at the side here. I'm going to pull in a ruler from the side and snap that to flush with the external edge of the north elevation. I'm going to do another one. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see it a bit better. Okay, do another one. But what I want to do on this side is make sure it's at the edge of the building, not the edge of that black feature that we've popped in. So now we've got the full width. What we're going to do is get our black arrow. We are going to click and hold and drag a box to select that whole thing. Now we're going to copy and paste it. All right. What we want to do now is, if we're standing at the south side, everything's going to be in reverse. So the steps will no longer be on the left, they would actually be on the right side. So we're going to go to Object, Transform, Reflect. Now we're going to do a vertical reflection, so make sure your angle's at 90 degrees. Hit OK. Now all I'm doing is using my arrow tools to pop this into place. So I'm just making sure that the two sides, the two vertical sides of this elevation are running nice and flush with those guides that I dropped in. Okay, the other thing I'm doing is making sure that the base of the bottom floor is sitting on a full grid line. Okay, awesome. So now we've got our south elevation, but the south side's a little bit different in terms of the features. So you can go ahead and hold down Shift and select things that you don't want. Actually, I'm going to keep the window upstairs. And we don't want a balcony. So I'm going to get rid of both of the balconies. And all I'm doing is just selecting them and deleting them. We're not going to see the roof. We'll delete that. Not going to see the bottom balcony. But you will see those pylons behind here. So what I'm going to do is select all of these guys. I'm going to say Object, Arrange, Center Back. So I can put things over the top. You might not be able to see the difference just yet. And I'm also going to lock them so that I don't... Actually, before I lock them, I'm going to change the height because we're only going to see them down the bottom. Okay, so I'm just changing the height because we'll only see them through the gap underneath the house because they feature at the front of the house up here. All right, I don't want these two windows, so I'm going to delete them. Oops, I don't want to do that. All right, so now I've got a bit of a fresh canvas. to play with. Okay, so this window here is the bottom story one. It's a kitchen window that's a splashback. So I'm going to zoom in. It's a little bit of a panoramic style window. I definitely want it to be 20 centimeters, so 2 mil in from the side. I want it to be exactly 1 meter from the bottom of that first story. And I want it to be 1/2 meter wide. So this needs to be 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Need to bring it down 3. Okay. And 1.5. Let's make it 2 meters wide. Awesome. Now, I could, if I wanted to, if I want to keep this like a line shine here, I can do that. I'm just resizing it to add it into my window. But if I was using color, I could add a gradient in here. So let me just show you quickly how to do that. All right, I'm going to select the fill part that I want it to be. I'm going to bring that fill section forward. I'm going to click on gradient and let's just pop one in there and nothing will come up. So let's go to our gradient tool over at the right. Now I've already made one up that's in here. So if it doesn't look like this, you can change the colors. Okay, so if it was black, it might come up and look like this. So you can change by hitting the blue and then hitting the color, the little like artist palette. If you bring the cyan section down and the black one up a little bit, or the magenta actually, it will make it a little bit more realistic. So to give you like a light blue. Now, this is currently a straight line gradient. I want it to be on an angle like a reflection. So I'm going to use this angle tool to pop it on a 45-degree angle. Sweet. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to delete the shine because now I have like a window texture. The second thing I'm going to do is create a window frame by thickening the stroke. Putting, 5 mil looks pretty sweet. I'm happy with that. Now with my window up the top, it is roughly in the middle. And I am going to just make it a little bit more square by bringing up the top and the bottom. And same as what I did with the bottom window, I don't want these lines. I'm going to do this in color just to show you guys who are working in color. Now I've already created this gradient, so I'm going to use my eyedropper tool and I can pop that straight in there. Now, as you can see, the linear gradient has come up. So to angle it, you want to go back to your gradient tool, back to the angle and pop it on a 45. It's also picked up the stroke weight as well as this one down here. So I do want to make that a thicker stroke. I am going to give it quite a thick border because it's a larger window. Okay. So the last thing I need to do here is to add some of my textures. All right, now the bottom section, what I'm going to do is create some wood paneling, and you can just go ahead and use your rectangle tool to do that. You can choose the thickness of your panels. I'm going to go with 30 centimeter. It's quite wide panels, and we want to make sure that there's no fill and that the stroke is really, really thin. So I'm going with a 1 mil. All right, now let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm just using my Alt click and hold button and moving these panels around. Now, as you can see, when I move them, I get these nice pink lines, like guidelines. They're telling me that they are perfectly aligned. Okay, when they're not, you get a different thickness of your line width, and you don't want that. Okay, if you go over this, you can just bring that back to the resize tool. Now, this is what we'd call a suggestion of texture. You can go ahead and fill the whole thing if you really want, but you don't need to. What I'm also going to do is add some color. So I want to choose a back tone for the panel. So we're working in like a coastal theme. So I'm going to choose like a warm brown. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Happy with that. And you can now see the paneling over the top. I'm just going to lock that so that it won't select while I'm selecting these. The other thing you can do just to make it look a little bit more realistic is just change the stroke color. Okay, so instead of using black, you can use something a bit lighter like a beige or a cream that's going to just really complement the coastal theme. Okay, if you see any that are overhanging, you can tidy those up as well using your arrow keys. And I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so there's my wood paneling. And up the top here, I am going to do some corrugated iron, some horizontal corrugated iron. Now, if you're just using line work, just bear with me for 1 second. So you can use the line segment tool. Okay, so I've got a line. Now I'm going to play around with a couple of things. I want to change the color of it to like a medium gray. Enhance the stroke just a little bit, like 0.35, even I'll do it 0.5 so you can see. Now, as you can see, it's quite geometric. It's got quite a square edge. So if I click on there, go up to my brush tool, and I'm going to select the 5-point oval. Actually, I'm going to select, you can have a play around with all of these, but yeah, the oval looks good. It's got a nice round edge, so it kind of gives off that corrugated iron feel. You need to just be careful that it doesn't overhang. So we want to make sure our first one is nice and flush inside our exterior. Now, if I can copy and paste these, and I'm holding down Alt, and I want them to all be exactly the same distance apart. So the pink guidelines will help you to do that. Whichever way you go, whenever the pink arrows come up, you know that you're exactly where you need to be. Cool. So I've done a few here. I've done a suggestion. It's still looking very geometric, so I'm just going to alternate the end points. So I'm using my white arrow tool, clicking on this one, using my arrows to arrow it back so I have some varying line lengths. It just makes it look a little bit more interesting and natural. Okay, now what I can do is select those and copy and paste them. Okay, so if you wanted to do a few more, you can do that. All right, I'm going to pop these up the top. I'm just using my arrow tool. And now what I'm going to do is use that reflect tool to get the same one to go down in this bottom corner. So copy and paste, bring it down here, but I need to reverse it. So object, transform, object, transform, reflect, vertical, 90 degrees, and it will flip it around the other way. Just using my arrow tool to get them in there. Okay, so now I've got some nice corrugated iron line work. I would say this is probably too much. I would maybe even just delete a couple of them just so it's a little bit more of a suggestion rather than an unfinished piece. If you're using color, the only change that you should add at this point is to go object on, oh, we need to make sure that we can, okay, cool, here we go. Select our background. Now, I'm going to put in a really light tone of grey. I want it to be lighter than my line work so that it gives off that corrugated iron kind of suggestion. These guys are all a little bit over. And I probably should have just locked it, but that's okay. I'm just going to flip those in. Cool. So there you've got it. That's the corrugated iron just by using a few lines with a different end shape. And the other thing you might want to do, this could be of interest of you, is to add a little gradient to this guy. So you can make up your own gradient by clicking on the gradient bar You can delete any of these that you don't want. So if I just want a nice light grey, awesome. Now I want to make that, I'm going to try a 180. No, I want a 90 degrees, but I want it the opposite way. So let's try a negative 90. There we go. Cool. That just helps give that illusion of that metal if that's what you're after. You don't need to use a gradient. You can use flat color, whatever's working best for you. But the most important thing is that these two align perfectly using your guidelines, and there is your south elevation.